Hey everybody, this is Miss Padberg, and I'm introducing you today to a new type of note-taking. It's called Cornell Method, and it's going to be what I think is a nice blend of the two styles we've already talked about. If you remember, we started out in North America talking about visual notes and putting things spatially on the page. A lot of people found this confusing. Some people really liked it. It was good for maybe while we were taking the notes, but when you went back to study, it may have been a little confusing for some people. Then we switched to formal outlining notes, and these had a very rigid structure from Roman numerals and letters and indentations, and some people found this to be a little too many rules, too confusing to follow the format. So that's why I really like the Cornell notes, because I think it's a great blend of the two. For people who like to use really specific formats, this one is very straightforward, and for people who want a little more flexibility, this allows you to do that. The most important part is that you're going to divide your paper up into two columns, about 1/3 to 2/3 of the paper, so not directly down the center. You're going to have a Q column, and this is where your big ideas are going to go. And then you're going to have your large area for note taking. And not only are you going to get to take notes here, but you're also going to get to go back and reflect and review, and we're leaving space to do a lot of the studying that goes along with notes. So let's take a look at Chapter 11. This is an example of what some Cornell notes might look like, and I'm going to show you how we got to this point. So notice that I have short words, phrases, not big long sentences, not copied from the text. I've kind of reduced it down to its most important elements. And then I've added visuals, so I could be flexible with my color, with my font, with the images that I add, and really make all the different ideas stand out. So let's go back to the beginning and find out how we get here. So we're going to start with a new piece of paper. You can do this electronically, or you can do this with a regular piece of notebook paper. So from the margin, I'm going to come over about 1/3 of the way and draw my line. Doesn't have to be straight, obviously. And just remember that on one side, I'm going to be writing the big ideas. These are the vocabulary words, the big topics. And then these are the small details that are going to make that stand out. This is the specifics. Now, all your notes need to come from some source. And this time around, we're going to be talking about Chapter 11 in your textbook. It has to do with extreme weather in the Caribbean. And that extreme weather takes the form of hurricanes. So let's go to our textbook, find out what we're going to learn about hurricanes, and then come back and record those key points. We're going to start with Section 2, the geographic setting, and find out a little bit more about how these hurricanes impact the Caribbean. The Caribbean islands stretch in a gentle arc from the tip of Florida to the northern coast of South America. They're also known as the West Indies. They divide the Atlantic Ocean from the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. Thousands of islands make up this chain. Many of them are tiny, with only a few people living on them, but some, like Cuba and Hispaniola, are big islands with millions of people. So let's narrow this down to its most important elements and put this in our notes. If I'm the kind of person that likes to do bullets or the formal outlining, I can stick with words. We're talking about the Caribbean, and we're describing its location. So those are the big ideas. What is in the Caribbean? Those thousands of tiny islands. Remember too that if you are doing this electronically, you could also type your information. And I could say that they stretch from the tip of Florida to South America. Also remember that we've talked about abbreviations, and that especially if you're listening to a lecture that goes really fast, abbreviations are going to be your best friends. So I can use abbreviations as long as I remember that FL means Florida and SAM means South America. Create your own abbreviations. Find out what works for you. If I forget what else I need to put in my notes, I can always go back to the text. So here's a piece I forgot, the West Indies. And then the dividing line between the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. Let's make sure we get those in our notes. Divides the big old Atlantic Ocean from the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea. AKA is usually means also known as the West Indies. And if we remember Columbus sailing to India, these are the West Indies and that he found instead. So these are for people who prefer words. If you want to also think of images, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, we could go back and try it that way. Here's my Caribbean location, and let's say here's my tip of Florida, Yucatan Peninsula, all the way down to South America, and so on. And here are my Caribbean islands. There's Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and Dominican Republic on Hispaniola. And then there's those thousands of other tiny islands in that gentle arc. Now, obviously, I don't need to put in the thousands of islands, but now I can add in some other key phrases, like these are also known as the West Indies, that they divide up the Atlantic Ocean from the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Caribbean Sea. And notice with my visuals now, I'm also getting a little more practice with locating those geographic features on a map. I might need to add, since I can't see that there are thousands of islands there, I might want to add that information in word form. And here I go. Oh, with about the same amount of space, but now with visuals as well as words, I have contained the same basic information about the Caribbean island and its location. Let's go back to the text and try it again. Islands in the sun. The Caribbean islands lie within one of Earth's tropical zones. They have a warm to hot climate year-round. Regular sea breezes cool the islands and make days pleasant. These islands were first settled by small groups of Native Americans. The word hurricane comes from one of these groups, the Taino. The Taino believed that a storm god called Huracan controlled extreme weather events. And we remember the Taino from our Dominican Republic research. So we have some additional information that we could add to our text. However, we want to stick to what's here in the textbook and record that information first. I go back to my notes page and I can start to add information about the climate. Notice that I can change the color based on a change in topic. And now I'm adding information about the tropics, putting tropical zone in red because that means that it's hot or warm all year round. And then I'm also going to add some information about the fact that this creates hurricanes. And we're going to pretty much call hurricanes this term over here in the Atlantic Ocean. Otherwise, they'll be called tropical storms or cyclones in other parts of the world. So you can see now how I would have gotten the same information. Here's my tropical zones, here's my Taino, the gods, and some additional information that you might come to find in the next paragraph about history, Europeans arriving. If I were to go back now and study this information, I would be able to cover up part of the text and find out just what these big key terms mean. And then I might be able to look at these small details and use them to make flashcards or to have someone quiz me about what the most important information is. So there you go. Cornell notes in a nutshell, and we'll continue practicing with these throughout the year. They're, again, very flexible. You get to customize them for your own personal style, and they're a great way to study later on. We'll be going over the study skills in a later date. Thanks, and have a fabulous week.